Okay, now it's time for everybody who would like to share some memories of our dear friend Dottie. First, we're going to hear from Mary Williams.
This will sound familiar, but my father and mother who started Crystal Lake camps had a dream, particularly my father. And we've seen how camp has grown. You all have been here at different times and in different connections. But I feel sure that my father would acknowledge that camp would not be nearly what it is without his daughter-in-law, Dottie St. Ange Alford. Each one of us has different things that we remember about Dottie. Some quirky, some funny, some maybe even naughty. But Dottie was wonderful to be different to everybody. And it's kind of like how beautiful God's garden is with all the different wonderful flowers that each of you represents, and the many ways that she represented to each person. You'll each one have something else that you want to remember. I know that I'm very grateful that my older brother decided to marry her, and I can remember so many things through the years. They had two such precious children, their daughters Anna and Catherine. I know how much Dottie loved her family. Her older sister Anna, there's a lot of Annas in the family by the time you get through, and I'm grateful that her nephew, one of Anna's sons, is here today. There is so much good that Dottie saw, and she did, and she represents to each one of us. And I'm just so grateful for each one of you who have come and said, oh, this is terrific. I'm so grateful. So I'm not going to say any more, but I hope you will tell the different facets of your memories of Dottie. She'll always be with you, just as though the door had just closed, and you know she's there, and you know what good she has. So I'm just going to pass this back to Shelley.
Thank you, Mary. Maybe I'll just jump in at the beginning. Since Mary was very instrumental in getting us involved in camp, we were doing Montessori training down in Washington, D.C., and we had rented our house out for the year, and we didn't have any, once school finished in June, we didn't have any place to go, and she said, well, why don't you go check out Crystal Lake Camp? My brother and sister-in-law are there. So we went up in February break. We drove up here and hoping for some snow, and there wasn't any snow anywhere in the neighborhood, and I couldn't see any mountains anywhere, but once we got here, there was snow, and we arrived in the late afternoon, and with Grace and Colin, they were 3 and 5 at the time, and it was a big school group just leaving. Dottie had been out on the slopes all day teaching them how to ski, and as many of you know, when you arrive here, often it's hard to make the connection. It was difficult at that time, but we finally found out that Dottie was out on the slope, and she was just coming off, seeing these kids off, and we introduced ourselves, and she said, well, let's get the kids up on the slope. You know, it was the end of the day. We were ready for supper, really, but she was ready to go, and we got the kids in skis, and off we went, and that sold us. It was full of life, and it's always been so full of life, and Dottie was certainly at the heart of that. So, other people who'd like to say something, if you'd like to come up and share with the microphone, or if you have a big voice and can just stand up and say as you like.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Roy Cully. I didn't know Dottie as long as some of you did. I met the Alfords in the early 70s. I'm one of Crystal Lake's original national ski patrols. I started skiing up here, and give you a little thing about Joe. Joe was always running up down the hill, and we'd leave here, we'd stop skiing at 5, and then till the patrol left here, it was 6 o'clock, and you might start down the mountain at 6, but you never got down to the hard road till 9, 10 o'clock because of all the people stuck on the hill. But Dottie, she was always real bright and cheerful. My memories of seeing Dottie was over at the downhill, at the shack there. She'd always be sitting behind the desk there and making sure everybody got their skis and stuff. And then she'd have a big smile on her face and stuff. And once the patrol became founded here, we'd come in and she'd always say, "You need something warm to drink, you know?" And over here, she'd always make sure we had tea or coffee and something to eat like cookies or brownies and stuff. And at lunch, she always made sure we had chili and things like that. And she was always quite the lady. I did see her heart drop real bad when the downhill closed, because that was her pride and joy. I think every Thursday night you'd come up and she'd be there with her smiling behind the desk, you know, with her smile, you know. And but then once that happened, you know, she came over here, but there was something about her glow was kind of downhill, you know, from then on. But she was quite the lady, and we all miss her. There's never going to be another Alford or Dottie, so we were all blessed. Thank you.
I'll read an email that someone sent in. My name is Jenna, but this is sent in by Abby Hillman. I had it ready and then it jumped away. Okay. She said, "I sincerely wish I could be here in person today to celebrate Dottie with you all, but unfortunately we had an important family event in Virginia, so here I am instead. But I wanted to share my loving thoughts about her. I had a wonderful opportunity to live with Dottie at Bellevue for several months during 2014. I needed a place to stay while I was undertaking the building of a new guest cabin here at camp, and Dottie graciously allowed me to stay at Bellevue during the winter and spring months while the zoning prep work, building, and decorating were underway. At the time, she was still in Maine, where she'd been living for 7 or 8 years with her husband, Richard Martin. Richard had recently moved into a nursing home, and Dottie was finishing up taking care of his business with loving help from her niece, Tammy, and from Chris Elliott, to whom she was deeply grateful for all the assistance she received. She was also grateful to Jim Keeley for all the help and all the help he lovingly gave with electronics and heavy lifting and many other tasks. Dottie called me frequently during the first months I was at Bellevue, and then she moved into Bellevue herself in April 2014. I have to confess that my relationship with Dottie was badly in need of healing when I first spoke with her that winter. Although she barely remembered me, having only seen me a handful of times in my adulthood, and having been only one of thousands of campers who trooped through Crystal Lake camps over the years, she welcomed me so graciously and lovingly that my somewhat uncharitable memories of her faded right away. I had been carrying around an impression of Dottie as a sort of a secret police of CLC. And I had vague discomfort when recalling a couple of reprimands I received in those years. But when I honestly searched my memory, 3 very specific incidents from my camper and staff days came to mind, revealing a very different picture of her that exposed my uncharitable impressions as unjust. The first was when I was in the leadership training course. It was evening, and I was sitting in Toronto with the rest of my LT class, listening to a bullfrog punctuate Dottie's interesting stories. She was talking about the importance of adhering to certain spiritual guidelines in our daily work as future camp employees. One story in particular stayed with me throughout the years about a Christian Science healing that she had had. My recollection is of feeling warm and safe and cared for by this director of our camp. The second incident was at the end of my LT course, midsummer, when I was due to return home but did not want to go at all. We were camping at World's End State Park, and Dottie came in the old station wagon to pick us up. I sat in the front seat, squeezed between Dottie and my counselor, and all the way home we talked about the fact that the stable head was leaving for the rest of the summer, so they'd be short-handed unless I stayed for the rest of the summer to help. Of course, I was delighted to stay, and of course, she knew I would be. The third incident was when I was on staff and going through an uncharacteristic bout of self-consciousness, so that I had trouble making announcements at mealtimes. Dottie pulled me aside and gave me a very rousing lecture about my self-worth and importance, and the importance of making my good ideas heard, etc., etc. And as anyone who knows me can attest, in front of any number of people from that day onward. With these memories firmly reestablished, I welcomed Dottie to Bellevue with sincere love when she arrived. And we spent the entire first weeks pretty much just sitting and talking about practically every detail of her life. In the process, I also learned the answers to many of those pesky questions about camp that you have when you're not the one in charge, and you wonder what's going on in the minds of the directors. It was amazing. It was like when you first arrived at camp in the beginning of summer, and you and your new best friend lay on your bunks and talk and talk and talk until you know everything about each other. She told about her happy childhood in Island Falls, Maine, her dad who worked nights, her mom who was a Christian Science practitioner, and her sister Anna, whom she loves and whom, when I lived with her, she still spoke with on the phone regularly and visited in Florida at least once a year. She talked about learning to cross-country ski in the snowy winters of Maine and about her growth in the sports through the years. I heard about grade school and high school and strange relatives and beloved relatives and many, many friends. She worked at a hotel on the coast of Maine during the summer and learned about the rewards of hard work there. She told about dating Richard Martin as a teen and how they got reacquainted and married after Joe had passed on. Once I remarked how athletic she was and she demurred, but I pointed out that skiing to her friend Tasha Paris's house in heavy snow and then back again in the same day, which for those who don't know requires skiing down this mountain and up the next one twice, requires significant athleticism. She then conceded, reluctantly adding, "Well, come to think of it, I did letter in every sport a girl could letter in when I was in high school." She shared that she went on to work for the CIA in Washington, D.C. after graduation from college, and that she had 2 different positions there, one requiring detailed knowledge of the Soviet Union. She and Joe Alford met in D.C. in a group of church friends they did social things with. She described how difficult it was to decide whether he was the one she was supposed to marry. And then, when she did, it was so clear that she had made the right decision. She mentioned her children often, how happy and peaceful Anna was as a child, and how grateful she was that Anna never spoke in a discouraging way about anything. She told many sweet and humorous stories about Catherine, and how blessed she was to have had all the experiences her daughters brought to her life. She had felt very unprepared to step into the role as camp director when she and Joe took over for Joe's parents. Joe was working on his PhD in math at Penn State at the time, and she was still adjusting to being a young wife and mother. But duty called, and they answered willingly. She admired Eileen Thompson-Sheets' confidence in everything related to camp, and she said she was a little afraid of her because Eileen knew so much more about camp than Dottie did. She told story after story of relying on Christian Science to demonstrate supply, staffing needs, difficulties that came up relating to campers, and developing a ski center in the winter to supplement camp income during the summer. She loved the ski center so much. It was truly where she felt most at home. And she was so grateful for the friendships she made there, as well as the friendships she made through camp over the decades. She spoke of how grateful she was for Tasha's prayerful support involving in solving camp problems over the years, about her pleasant visits with Eileen and Tawanda in recent years, and how much she enjoyed being with her niece Tammy. She was grateful to reestablish her friendship with Peter Wright and John Manifold and many other dear camp friends after she returned from Maine. She also spoke of her friendship with local people, membership in the First Church of Christ Scientist in Williamsport, attending the Mapleton Church here in the mountain for a time, and involvement in other local groups and activities. She talked about mistakes she'd made and regrets she'd had, and she dug into a healing prayer she knew would resolve those troubled thoughts. When I pointed out the enormous good her many sacrifices for Christian Science youth had brought, she was grateful to hear it and acknowledged that there had been many sacrifices, but that they didn't feel like sacrifices since she had loved her life so much. She spent many hours a day during the months we shared together at Bellevue studying the Bible and the teachings of Christian Science and praying deeply. It was truly a gift from God to be able to spend those precious months with Dottie, and I'm a better person for having known her. Abby Winland Hillman, October 2015.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Darwin. I worked here during, I started as a dishwasher in the wintertime. And then one thing I found out that when you come to Crystal Lake and you start working here, you kind of enter into a different family. They always took you in and gave you lots of opportunity. When I got old enough and got out of high school and stuff, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and Joe always wanted to buy Ned's garage down there and have me work down there, and then I didn't have the money to go to college, so Dottie and Joe, they didn't have the money either, and then they ended up giving me the money they didn't have, and gave me opportunities and everything. And when I think of Dottie, I think of selflessness. She's, I remember a time when we were driving up to the downhill, and then she says, she had this Bronco too, and she goes up on the bank. She says, "See how good this four-wheel drive is?" She's up on the bank going sideways, like, holy cow. And she goes, I go, "What do you do if you lose control?" She says, "Well, I just leave the wheel go, and God will take care of the rest." So, but she always had that. She always had that sense of humor, and she always had that faith that no matter what happened, that God would take care of her. And I seen her. There was a guy that tried to take everything she had, and you think you'd hate that guy for trying to do that, and she didn't. When that guy got sick, she went up there every day, cooked the guy dinner, and took care of him, and then preached to him. But that's the Dottie I know. Thank you.
I think I'm okay.
You got a good voice.
Without the mic. I knew Dottie in Washington before she came to Crystal Lake, and at that time in the forum group that we had, Joe had a bottle band where all the bottles were tuned into different notes, and we all would play various things. And it was a stitch because we really didn't know what we were doing, but that's when she sort of first met Joe. After that, I knew her at camp, and I'm the infamous one that she said she was afraid of. I don't think Dottie was really afraid very much of anybody. I think of her as an intense person. She wasn't a calm person. Her favorite thing from Science and Health was the calm, strong currents, and she was always trying to do that. But she was intense. Whatever she did, she went at it wholeheartedly, even if she made mistakes and later regretted them. She always went after it. And when she came to camp, as she said, she really didn't know very much about what camp should be about. And she went out with her searchlight to make sure everybody was behaving. My sister-in-law, Betty, and I and a couple of people would sit up on top of the roof of the wigwam and watch her go around. And so I've known her a long time. It was very interesting that after Bob Sheets and I reacquainted ourselves after 42 years, and then we got married, that she met Richard Martin and had the same sort of a situation. But she learned so much from all of you and all the campers. Yes, she was intense, and she didn't do things part way, but she also learned well. She was very bright. She loved it when she was at Bellevue and people would come to visit when they were still having bed and breakfast, because she loved talking with people. She had a lot of reading interests and a lot of musical interests, and she loved people. And when people were around, she was not silent. She loved to talk to people and share ideas. After she came back to Bellevue, she and I talked on the phone almost every single day. She was a very close friend. And we were able to be helpful to one another. And I think that she trusted me and I trusted her. And I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Eileen.
We had pretty much ways too. I'm a crier. Sorry. My family is from here. My dad walked this land before it was Crystal Lake. My dad started working here when I was 2, and Anna became my best friend. And we even had a 15-year hiatus. And I met her when Joe passed on. But in that hiatus, I had a falling out with my parents. And who let me come up here and work? Who never even asked about it, but said, Diana, you can work. They have helped so many people in this community. I know people come in for camp, but what they've done and how they have touched us in this community is priceless. They taught us how to do things. I'm still a great cook because Dottie at the end allowed me to work that. And I started as a dishwasher, and I will not eat oatmeal ever again. And I got back, and I won't eat oatmeal. And there's just a huge loss for me because I was friends with all the family. Joe taught me things about the piano. I even majored in music for a while. I have sat in Towanda for an hour with Kathy on my back with no one around and giggling because no one was there to help get her off my back. It's wonderful to see the camp alive and thriving. And I'm just so very sad that all 4 are gone.
They'll always be with us.
I just want to say just a little something because, yeah, I think it shows everybody what Dottie was, but I was going through a tough time and we weren't close, we were friends, but you know, we weren't tight. But one day she stopped in and she had heard that I wasn't doing well. And she sat there with her books and so forth. And she was the only person that did that. And I think that says a lot about her.
Amen.
I need to add that Anna and I often talked about our Dottie mothers.
Thanks, everybody can hear me. My name's Ed Minner, and I'm Ann's Dottie's sister's son, and Dottie was proud of being from Maine, and just a bit, she was the relish girl at the resort in Maine that was mentioned earlier, and my mom was the hostess, and they would have some epic battles between the sisters, and but the thing that I'm always struck by with Dottie was her enthusiasm. There was no halfway. Whenever I would come to camp, she'd say, let's go sail. We could sail out here on the lake or skiing or whatever. And I was always thankful for her, the influence in my life. And I've heard that over and over today, so it's very moving. Thank you.
I have so many memories of Dottie that I couldn't tell you in a whole day. But the things that I remember are the times when I was in a very difficult situation. And I won't go into any details, but I was forced to sue a bank for taking money from our family. And at first, people harassed me when I was down there alone, and a detective told me that I needed to have someone go with me back and forth to Texas, and then people wouldn't harass me. And I didn't know who in the world would possibly go with me, and guess who did? It was Dottie. And she flew down with me twice, and we had a wonderful, I had a marvelous practitioner, teacher of teachers actually, working for me. And we had so many healings. The courthouse where we had to go all the time was the very courthouse that was across the street from where Kennedy had been shot. And even that, this was in 1984. And even at that late date, there was an atmosphere in that courthouse that you could discern. It was so intense. And so much prayer was done during this whole thing. Dottie would stay in the hotel room and pray. And I had the practitioner helping me, and then I would pray and face all these people, 8 lawyers at a time and all that kind of stuff. And but it was amazing, the fruitage that came out of that. That atmosphere in that courthouse completely changed. And one of the people who was on the jury came at the beginning of the trial, and he was obviously a truck driver or something, and he was dead tired, and he went to sleep on the bench. And he was very shabbily dressed and so forth. By the end of the trial, he had gotten another job, and he came to court in a 3-piece suit. And it was an amazing experience. And some funny things happened too. They weren't funny at the time. But there were certain family members involved too, distant family. And they thought it would be fun to short sheet us. And they did that one time. And another time, they trapped us in the elevator. And so Dottie and I climbed out over the top of the elevator. and I could go on and on, and we drove lots of places together. But that was really the high point because it was such a very challenging situation. But with Dottie's help, we turned it around. We didn't win, but the other people didn't win either, so.
Thank you very much.
grateful for many memories that I have of working with Dottie and getting to know her as a small child coming to camp, and lots of ski trips that we went on. I went on a ski trip with Anna and her in Oregon one year, and up into Vermont, and a whole bunch of trips to different places in New York. I'm so grateful that they included me in their family. I know there are other people just like me who felt really welcomed into the family, and it was such fun. One time I told her my mother had given me a geode for Christmas or something, and so the next Christmas she had this geode that she gave me and said, "From Mom number 2" or something like that. And it was fun to participate in her wedding, her second wedding with Richard, at the last minute. It's just playing Chinese checkers was fun, and all the food things that we did. I was sorry that I lived so far away that I couldn't come and visit, but sometimes Joe or Anna or Dottie would come and visit me in St. Louis, and that was always fun to have them come visit. Joe visited me one time in grad school, and I showed him through my lab and things. But it was just so special to be part of that family. I should also mention Catherine, my first introduction of her pouring ice down my back, but in a loving way that only Catherine could do. But the whole family was so wonderful, and Dottie's been so wonderful. I am so grateful to have been part of this group.
Thank you, Jeff.
We had another email coming in from another camp alum. This is from Justin Bird, who was a camper in the 90s and 2000s, and also in staff in 2000s. Dottie has left us with her enduring legacy, a legacy which will become more profound with each passing day, a legacy unique just to her, a legacy intertwined with the fabric of CLC and all of us, a legacy that sprung from the Alfords, a legacy with roots to our souls, a legacy which is now ours to continue. Legacy can be defined as our birthright, inheritance or heritage. It belongs to us because we share together in her and Joe's vision. My memories, keen and bright, flashing like silver, swift as the wild goose flies, dip, dip, and swings. The song waxes and wanes along the visions of Joe singing in the council fire and me looking far over Crystal Lake. On so many of those warm summer nights from the council fire, I remember seeing the faint lights from the Dottie-mobile driving back and forth on the camp road. I'm sure Dottie found few moments of solace from her busy days to take care of last-minute details while we were all in song. I didn't think much of those passing lights at the time, but now see in every memory, whether small or large, a love, care, passion, perseverance, and commitment to a very high ideal and inspiring vision that she and Joe had for this camp. With Dottie's passing, I've been saddened that the family that founded this camp is no longer here to impart its vision to us or me. I feel an increased responsibility now because we are the camp's grandfathers and grandmothers, imparting to our camp children the values we hold dear, values which Dottie helped to shape. Were it not for Dottie and what she gave to us, we would not have had the same CLC. For this, I cannot be more grateful to know this remarkable woman and her remarkable family. My paddles, keen and bright, flashing like silver, swift as the wild goose flies, dip, dip, and swings, dip, dips, and swings them back. The song now wanes, but it will come again. Let us get on our Dottie-mobiles and take care of what's necessary to keep the legacy of Dottie and CLC alive for generations to come. Much love to you, Dottie, and to all those lives you've touched. Mine was one of them. Justin Bird.
Well put.
I had the privilege of knowing Dottie, both end of the spectrums. As an 8-year-old, being totally terrified. Well, actually, when I was 8, Joe's parents were in their last year running the camp, and the next year, Dottie and Joe were in the driver's seat. And then coming back as a mid-teen, 14, 15, 16, so forth, even more terrified of Dottie. She did have her little bicycle going back and forth, and she was fearsome, but she really was amazing. And then the blessing, really, of getting to know her better once I moved to upstate New York, and she and Anna, I remember at one point, Anna was working on the West Coast and bought a VW camper, and she and Dottie had a little road trip and stopped in Webster and stayed with us, and that was just a hoot. And then just having, in the last 10 to 12 to 14 years, seeing her more often down here in a more relaxed situation, and then just spending time with her this year at Bellevue and in Boston. And I just think of the tremendous, and it's been mentioned before, sacrifice that each member of that family made and gave, and the extended family. I'm just so grateful for their tremendous contribution to so many of us who were little kids at one point here, and the community. They really just took their role seriously, but with great love and joy.
I'd like to second what Megan just said. I'm so grateful to the Alford family for having started this camp. I was back here when Aunt Kay and Uncle Charlie were still running the camp as a child, and I'm very grateful to say that I had Mary as a wonderful Catholic counselor, and she was one of my favorites. I was also a project girl, and that's a person who cleans all the toilets as a teenager. And I can remember cleaning Tawanda when Anna was a baby, and I had Dottie to myself. It was the only time I ever did, I think. And she talked to me. I was just this kid, and she talked to me. And I still remember one thing she told me was, I was like 16, and she said, I've just been reading some of my old college papers, and boy, they were not very good. And I was thinking, will I ever get to the point where I think my college papers were immature? I can't even imagine that time coming. But it was wonderful when she and Joe took over the camp. Both of my siblings attended here. All three of us have wonderful memories. And then I also have an adopted brother who's 18 years younger than I am, who came from a very difficult situation and had a lot of trouble in school. And he came to Crystal Lake camps, and Joe and Dottie just made a wonderful experience for him. I can't even begin to tell you what a difference it made in his life. When he heard that Joe passed on, he just had the most wonderful, warm, and loving memories that he shared with me about Joe. I also remember Dottie, too, as someone who just said whatever was on her mind. And when I came back here 3 years ago for the alumni weekend, and she saw me and she said, Barbara Kinzel, that is a name from the past. You go way back. And I do. And I'm very grateful to have Crystal Lake in my experience and have met so many wonderful people here over the years. It's just a wonderful place, and the Alford family. I'm just so grateful again. Thank you.
Thank you. We close with singing. Favorite camp hymn, hymn 66. From these thy children gathered in thy name, from hearts made whole, from lips redeemed from woe, thy praise, O Father, shall forever flow Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Divine Presence, breathe thou thy blessing on every heart in this house. For ye shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills shall break forth before you into singing, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Amen.